Have you ever felt like your fertility journey was an uphill battle? Like, no matter what you do, the odds just keep stacking against you. Maybe you've been told that statistics aren't in your favor, or you've experienced the heartbreak of pregnancy loss and wondered if you should keep going. In today's episode, I'm sitting down with Danielle, a mom of three who knows firsthand the emotional roller coaster of secondary infertility and recurrent pregnancy loss. After facing multiple losses and being given just a 5% chance of conceiving naturally, Danielle refused to accept defeat. Instead, she took matters into her own hands, advocating for herself, seeking out alternative therapies, and ultimately defying the odds to welcome her miracle baby into the world. If you're feeling discouraged, lost, or just need a reminder that hope is still alive, this episode is for you. Feeling like this whole baby making journey is never going to work out? You've done it all, diet changes, supplements, tracking your cycle, and yet the pregnancy test is negative. It's so frustrating, and you're asking yourself, why isn't this happening for us? I'm Susan Gladstein, a holistic fertility coach and mom to 7, including 2 miracle babies after a vasectomy reversal, and I get it. Being told everything looks fine by doctors while still feeling stuck can leave you feeling hopeless and confused. On this podcast, I'll share practical, natural ways to support your fertility without all the overwhelm. Forget the everything's normal talk and the rush into fertility treatments. I'm here to show you a better way. If you're ready to take practical steps that fit with God's plan for your family, you're in the right place. I truly believe that you can have the baby you've been praying for. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited because I'm going to call her my sister from down under because my husband was born in Australia, so I feel like this kinship with her. But Danielle is here. She's a mom of 3, a former financial services leader, and she's an entrepreneur who is super passionate about empowering women through styling and through business to help create lives of freedom and connection. And what I really love is that she is on a mission to show women that they can challenge the status quo and design a life that truly aligns with their deepest desires. So thank you so much for taking time out and being with us on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So I initially sort of reached out to you because I know that you have had some challenges with secondary infertility and pregnancy loss. And in our community, that's something that's fairly common. I think it's just because we are hyper aware of that exact moment we get pregnant, or we're having we've had a vasectomy reversal and we're just like in the wait and it's taking forever and healing and we want a baby like yesterday. So I really appreciate your willingness to share about that side of it's. I know it's not easy and it is painful at times to share that deepest longing and loss. Kind of just tell us your sort of story
Yeah,
and some of the challenges emotionally, physically that you experienced and through that process.
yeah, absolutely. So, well, as you mentioned, I'm a mum of 3, and I am 44 now. My eldest is 15. My middle child is almost 7, and my youngest just turned 2 last week. And so the journey with, I guess, the world of fertility for us started after number 2. So I had my eldest with my now ex-husband, and we conceived very easily, quickly, and had a healthy and a great birth. So no issues. So I now see one of the lucky ones. But then, life happened, divorced, repartnered. Years later, I thought Harrison would be my only child, my one and only, and repartnered and with Mike, and we wanted to have a child together. And so I said, the usual, well, it could take 12 months, time's ticking for me. Harrison was 7 at the time. We better get going. So then, lo and behold, Elijah came along very quickly as well, almost like surprisingly quickly. And so again, no issues there. But it wasn't until 12 months later that we discovered we were pregnant again, and which we're very happy about because we wanted to have a closer age gap because of the big difference between Harrison and Elijah. But unfortunately, and I say early pregnancy loss, that's how I like to term it. The term miscarriage doesn't really sit well with me. So I'll say early pregnancy loss throughout, but we're about between 4 and 6 weeks along at that time. And I didn't know anybody else who'd had any early pregnancy losses. Now, that doesn't mean that there wasn't anybody else. It just wasn't spoken about, as I've, come to know. So that happened. Yes, of course, I was upset, but I had the previous experience with my other two that told me everything would be fine. So, a few months later, when I sort of felt ready again, kind of, got back on track, and we tried again, and we became pregnant, and this sort of cycle started to happen, we say regularly. So we got to the third early pregnancy loss at around the same time, 4 to 6 weeks, when, I started to think, well, okay, something's not right here. Spoke to the GP, and she said, well, actually, I'd spoken to her earlier, but she said, in Australia, I don't know what it's like in the US, but in Australia, if you've had two, it's just one of those things. But once you've had 3, that's when you get referred to a specialist. So we got referred to the specialist, and the specialist tells us to just keep going. We can conceive, just keep going. Well, we thought, okay, you're the expert. We'll just keep going. No, it happened again. And I am someone who has always loved natural therapies. So I was going to a chiropractor, I was seeing a naturopath, I was also doing acupuncture. And my acupuncturist said to me, you must look into the DQ alpha gene and natural killer cells. He said, because I think there's more going on for you. Just keeping going is not the way. So I'd never heard of these things. So I did some research, and it was all about the DQ alpha gene is about having your partner that you have this particular gene match with. You're not related. So I would like to mention that we're not related, but it means that my body or my immune system doesn't sense that this embryo that I'm carrying is something that it should protect. And it just so happens that Mike and I ended up being a partial match. You can be a partial or a complete match. And the specialist we were seeing didn't test for that. It's something that doctors apparently either believe in or they don't. And we're very fortunate enough. In Melbourne, we have a specialist who does test for it. There's only 3 in Australia. And my understanding is that a lot of couples come from overseas to actually see these doctors. And so, yeah, we got on the wait list for that doctor, and we got the answers that we needed after the 5th loss. So when you ask about, what were sort of the emotions and what was coming up for me during that time, up until that point, I had been I'm a process-oriented, action-oriented person. And I found out later that I really wasn't in touch with my grief. I was just moving on. What can we do now? What can we do next? How do we overcome this? How do we achieve, having our baby? And all of that was really just building up inside, and I was ignoring it, really. I continued to work. No one at work knew. I kept on up a front. I even had one of my losses at work, which there's a number of employers at the moment, I just wanted to mention this, who are actually acknowledging miscarriage and early pregnancy loss and are introducing paid leave, which is amazing. And we need more employers to actually do that. Because here in Australia, you get 10 days of personal leave a year. But when you need more, so I actually, at the time, not only was I doing all these natural therapies, but I started to attend women's circles. I'm not sure if you are familiar with that sort of thing, but it's really essentially it's a group of women who connect, whether it's online like this or in person, and they connect around what's going on for them at that point in time. And it can be around whether it's a full moon or a new moon. It can be spiritual, or it doesn't have to be. But I really found it cathartic for me to speak to women who didn't know me, who were objective, who were not family or friends, who weren't judging. And I could just share and really verbalize how I was feeling and almost get that off my chest. So this was something that really helped me during that time. And I ended up working one-on-one with the lady who was running those circles, who was quite spiritual or is spiritual. And then that's a whole nother part to the story that, got us to where we are now.
I can relate so much to what you were saying because I had my miscarriage. So I went in for my 9 week. It was the first appointment with the new OB. She does an ultrasound and says, maybe you're not as far along as you think you are because it's only measuring 5 weeks and I'm not detecting a heartbeat.
Mm,
And in
mm,
that moment, I knew it was over. But I was completely blindsided by it because I did not suspect that at all. And a
mm,
few days later, I start showing signs while I was at work and in pain. And I just had to put up a good face and
mm.
pretend like everything was okay because nobody else, like I hadn't told anybody, it was
No,
so early on.
no.
And so the whole first part of my current pregnancy was just like I almost was just waiting for the shoe to drop. And I had so much. I mean, I got pregnant pretty quickly. My, loss was in April. And by the end of July, I was pregnant again.
Mm,
So it was quickly, but I don't know that I had truly processed through a lot of that. But for me,
mm.
it's a very spiritual experience. For me, it was like I'm crying out in anger, like I didn't I didn't know that I wanted this baby so much, and now that I
Yeah,
wanted it, it's being taken
yeah.
away, and I'm so just angry about it. And I heard God speak to me and say, I know. I lost my son too. And it
Mm,
wasn't until probably my like third month maybe that I was thinking back about like when the date of my loss was the same date as my current due date a year later. And I took
oh,
it as like a wink that I just needed to trust that everything was going to be okay and stop worrying and stop stressing because it wasn't going to be helpful for me
yeah.
or my baby. So for me, it was a very spiritual, like,
Mm, mm,
process of just trusting that things were going to be okay and that I was going to be okay. Because at the moment, I was like, I don't know that I'm going to be okay. And
yeah.
so I would love to
Mm,
hear more about that, like how it impacted your mindset and your relationships, your overall outlook on life, like how the groups helped you, all of the things. Like, what would you
yeah,
tell other people who maybe are experiencing the same?
yeah. I consider myself to be a very positive person. And I actually, when I think about it now, I actually don't know how I stayed, so positive. And I actually had people around me, probably, well, you get the, oh, really, you're trying again? Like, as in, oh, why are you putting yourself through that? So I had to adopt the mindset of I need to shut out the people who have that energy or have that opinion, because that wasn't going to help me. I didn't want those thoughts of others to creep in. In terms of relationships, I really felt like it made my relationship with Mike, my partner, stronger. He was so supportive, and it wasn't until once we got onto the doctor who diagnosed us and then told us what our options were, we were given a 5% chance to have a successful pregnancy the natural, conventional way, or a 20% chance if we do IVF. And by that point, we were in our early 40s. We had Harrison and Elijah, and we knew straight away that we didn't want to go through the process of IVF because we knew that would take or could take years, more than one cycle. I knew of many women by that point who were, up to the 12th cycle, and they hadn't had any success. So we didn't want to go down that path. And so then that left us with the 5% chance. And when we were given that statistic, it shattered me. It shattered me because I felt like I'd come all this way to this point to get the answer that I was looking for, but then to be told, well, you've just got a very slim chance. And yeah, I vividly remember Mike driving home, and I was just in tears, very distraught. It's over for us, is what, I'd been positive all that time until that point. What's the point? It's over. He's trying to be, he's trying to be supportive. And then I spoke to a friend, and she said that 5% is not necessarily you. That 5% of women, or the other 95%, are not doing what you're doing, or they may not be doing. So that doesn't mean that you're in that 95%. You could be in that 5. So she said, doctors, they don't have bedside manners. Just take it and throw it away. Let it wash over your head. And that was the best advice that I could have received, because I thought, yeah, I'm doing all these things. So yeah, I can do this. And that, I dug my heels in then. And there is there's a bit of a controversial treatment with this DQ alpha gene. There's not only an immune protocol for me to go on, which is almost like preparing for IVF, medication, injections, and intravenous fluids as well. But what they do is they took Mike's blood from him, they extracted the white blood cells, and then that gets injected into my body. So that desensitizes my body so it doesn't see that match of that gene. So it's quite, I'm going to have his blood in me. That's interesting. We're not married, but we're married by blood, is what I say. And so you do that once, you do it 4 weeks later, and then you need a booster of that again every 6 months until you become pregnant. So we did that. I started on all the medications, which included steroids as well. And we became pregnant, I think. So we finished that treatment in June, and we became pregnant in around November. Yeah, late October. And then I had another loss. So that loss was at the 9-week mark, which was longer than all of the others. So instead of thinking this is never going to work, I went, this worked better than before. We're onto something. And I then looked at the protocol that I was on, and I just questioned the doctor around, is there anything else we can do? Can we tweak? Can we make changes? And so we made some changes. It was all about, what are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? But it was Mike who was actually done at that point in time. He was really worried for me, worried about, what it was doing to me emotionally, makes me emotional now. Was worried about the medication, that I was on. And so, yeah, we had the discussion, and my head was saying, yeah, he's right. We need to move on. We've really given this a good go. But I felt guilty to stop. I felt guilty that, yeah, I was letting go of that chance. And I think because in my heart, I knew there was another soul out there. Yeah. um, so I agreed, knowing in my heart that there was still a chance. And we were going to, just move forward with our lives and with our boys. And I think I was 41, yeah, by that point. And I actually then was in a lot of pain coming off the steroids. So I would wake up every morning in pain. So I decided I just needed to get my body back to base camp. So I went gluten-free, dairy-free, lots of supplements to reduce inflammation, worked with a naturopath, and then worked with the same lady who ran the women's circles, to actually really deal with the grief after all of that, and to deal with that feeling of guilt. And she said to me during that session, she had me write a letter to my 6 lost babies to thank them for coming. And during that time, she received a message. So remember, she's spiritual. And she asked me, did I have any girls' names already? No, sorry. She said, did you have any names, for your baby? And I said, yes, only girls' names. I was very adamant that I was going to have a girl after having 2 boys. And she said, I've been writing, whilst you were writing your letter, I was writing a list of names, Sophie, Sophia. Now, I've never discussed names with her before. I said, no. And she said, I had a gap and I was told to fill in this gap with Amelia. And I said, Amelia was on my list, very high up on my list. And she said, don't give up. She said, I know you've decided no, but don't give up. Amelia is coming. And 3 months later, we conceived naturally without any medication. And I just knew, as soon as we found out, I knew she was here to stay. I knew she was a girl. I knew she was here to stay. All of that, as you mentioned, waiting for the penny or waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for the wheels to fall off, all those feelings that I had with the other pregnancies, even, and I would go to the toilet and be worried, every time. I didn't have that worry. So it was just like this deep knowing that she was here. And even, we hit a bump in the road early with one of the scans. I'll be so glad to never walk past an ultrasound place again, because I do feel triggered by them. But yeah, I just knew she was here to stay. And we had an early bump in the road, and I did a lot of journaling and manifesting, and that went away. And then, yeah, we found out that she was going to be a girl. And, it was just, Mike had to hold me up. I knew, but being told. Yeah, and so we have Amelia, who's just turned 2.
Oh my gosh.
So, yes. So
Oh,
we are, I do consider that we are, one of the lucky ones, and we were in that 5%, with a lot of determination and a whole village around ourselves. Western medicine, natural therapies, people who really specialize in helping women to achieve what they want to achieve. And yeah, I mean, she's the boss of the house now. So,
I love
but
that.
yeah.
So a few things that you said that really stick out to me is because I see it so often in so many of my clients. The first consult that I have with them, their faces are just full of defeat because they've been told by their doctor that their chances are so slim or it's not going to happen. It's not in the cards for them.
Yes.
And someone once said that was like basically they felt like they had been speaking death over their own journey. And when they
Mm,
decided to speak life into it, that's when they
yes.
got pregnant. And I'll tell you, every time I have a call with someone, by the second call, when I've spoken belief, I think it's going
Mm,
to happen. If it's in your heart, it will happen. Probably not the way you think it will or how you
yes.
want it to,
Yes.
but it will happen if it is in your heart. And by the
Mm,
second call, I see it physically in their face. They're a completely different person. In fact, I
yes.
asked one girl because every sort of thing, tweak, tip, like from a holistic perspective, because that's very much what I'm looking at. Like, let's not get wrapped around statistics, but like overall,
Mm,
what's the big picture? How are you optimizing your health, your fertility? How are you aging well? All of those things, your
yes.
longevity, just feeling good. Because
Yes.
fertility is kind of a secondary to all of that. But like anytime I tell her something, it's always met with why it won't work or whatever. And I finally just asked her, do you think you'll get pregnant? Do you
Mm,
believe it? Because I
mm,
think that that's so powerful. Whatever you think is what you'll achieve a lot of the time. Whether
yes.
you're doing things subconsciously to self-sabotage your progress, if you don't believe it, then you're probably not taking as good care of yourself. And so the fact that you had even just a glimmer of hope, like you're saying there's a chance, like you
Yes.
held on to that. And that
Yeah.
belief, I think, is what helped carry you through because then you
Mm,
did the things to
that's
take care
right.
of yourself to make it happen. So I like number one, belief. And I love that. So I've had dreams about each of my pregnancies. I
Mm,
had a dream about a little girl, and I think that that's probably the one that I lost. And I
mm.
thought for sure that this pregnancy was going to be the girl that I had dreamed about because she was there and she was being given to us and she was a little fat baby. And
Oh, wow.
um, when I found out that I was having a boy, I was like, what? No. But I had also had a dream about that there were four of us and the baby that was with us, he was older, was a boy. So it was kind
Oh,
of like I was shocked when they said it was a boy, but also it was like, I dreamed of you. So like,
yeah.
no, I know that this is going to be like you're part of our family. So I do think that there's something powerful in that gift and that glimmer that we're given
Mm.
that helps hold on to that hope. And I'll tell you, the other people that I've ever dreamed about being pregnant ended up pregnant. So it's like,
Wow.
if I tell you you're having a baby,
Yes.
if I dream
You're
it, it's
having a
gonna
baby.
happen. So anyway, well, I would love to know a little bit more about like how, I'm very much into the holistic thing, and a lot of the stuff that Western medicine tells us isn't always, in my opinion, a full good picture. I mean, even just using the example of the 5%,
Yes.
what role did that play in your journey, and how did you sort of integrate this mind body connection and spirituality in your healing process?
Yeah. So good question because even coming, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and I do actually being on podcasts is actually quite cathartic for me because I feel like I'm still healing from everything that I experienced. And I mean, I've completely flipped my career now upside down. I used to be in financial services, I was in a corporate for 24 years. And I feel like that contributed to the person that I was when I was trying to have our third. Very structured, masculine industry, but I'm talking from an energy point of view. And, even saying the word energy, even talking about spirituality was not part of my vocab, 5, 6 years ago. Um, but I'd always been interested in, yeah, as I mentioned, always been interested in the natural therapies. And I got to a point where I wanted to go on a retreat. I felt like I wanted to just step away from the home, step away from work, again, be with women who didn't know me And I think because after having Elijah and then starting to have these losses, I wanted to find who I was and find some identity. And I liked the idea of, just going away and spending time with other people. And so that going on an all-female retreat is probably what started the process of this whole spirituality side, because I just really enjoyed being with people I didn't know and just making true connections and actually talking about deeper things, not surface level. There are friends that you have that you'll only ever talk about the surface things. And then there are, friends that you'll have that you'll go much deeper with. And I found it really easy to connect with these women. And I actually just went down a rabbit hole one day on Instagram, as you do, scrolling. I was looking for a retreat and I came across this lady who was the one who told me Amelia was coming. And that's how it got me onto her women's circles. It was during COVID, and I'm in Victoria, in Melbourne. We were one of the, if not the most locked down state in Australia and maybe even around the world. And so we, couldn't see our friends, we couldn't see our family. And so the online space and having these women's circles to go to, I think it was like once a fortnight, was a real release for me. And I started to hear from other women who were also having, fertility issues, amongst other things. And so that just started to open my mind more. I feel like now that I used to live in a bubble. I had my 9 to 5 job. I was comfortable, good salary. You get your sick leave, you get your holiday leave. You do a good job, you hopefully get a pay rise. And, I loved it. I loved the people I was working with. I loved helping them do a good job in their day. So I was really comfortable. But then, even joining a Facebook group for the DQ Alpha gene group, I was and reading the stories, and there was just a whole nother world out there that I had never been exposed to because I hadn't needed to, or before with Harrison and Elijah, there was no issues having them. So I think the women's circles just really helped me to learn from other women and to start hearing about how other people live, how other people, where they focus their mindset, what things they were doing. So if there was other women who were trying to have a baby, they were doing acupuncture, they were doing naturopathy. And, I thought, well, why not? Why don't I give that a go? Because I don't want to be restricted to just the Western medicine side. And I love to go and have a bit of a relaxation time on the table and have some acupuncture, so it was a bit of time out for me from a busy household as well. So, it was very selfish. It's a bit self-indulgent, but, I'm all for self-care. And so again, it was through the women's circles that really led me to start connecting my mind to my body. And just, I feel like there's a whole world of information out there that can be negative and it can be harmful, but I feel like I've got a really good intuition with the people that I come across, and I can tell whether, this is somebody that I feel has some expertise in this area. I'm going to follow them, for example, on Instagram, or, I'll listen to what they say and I'll go and do my research. So the people who I chose, I guess, to be part of my tribe to help me get to where we got to, just really good, genuine people who are not about the Western medicine at all. And, I could comfortably say, well, okay, I'm going to do this on the Western side and I'm going to do this on the natural side, and vice versa. Even with my GP, she was very, I made sure I had a GP who understood that I wanted to do, the spiritual side and the natural therapies. And she was always passing, my blood work across and communicating with them if I needed her to. So I think that was really important, is really to advocate for yourself and make sure you've got the right team around you. And also, when we had the first specialist and I asked him about the DQ alpha gene and the natural killer cells, he said, no, no, that's not your issue. And well, it turns out he was wrong, but I didn't want to take no for an answer by that point. And I wasn't just going to keep going with his method of saying, yeah, let's just keep going. So again, I advocated for myself and went and found the doctor who gave us that answer. Even though it was a wait list, we waited. So that's really important, is advocating for yourself and just really following your intuition. And even when we did become pregnant with Amelia, I had the choice of whether to go back on the medication or not. And again, I just listened to my instincts. Mike was firm in giving his opinion that he didn't want me to go on the meds because he was worried for me. And, I appreciate that from him. But for me, I go back to my compliance days and it was about risk mitigation. And I wanted to do everything that I could. And, if something went wrong, I would blame myself if I hadn't gone on it. So I went back on the medication. It was my backup, just to know that I'm doing everything that I can. And so then, that sort of tested our relationship as well. But, he left it with me to decide. At the end of the day, he said, it's your body. And so I made that decision again for myself. So I think just being really strong in knowing who you are, advocating for yourself is so important.
As someone who personally hosts retreats in Costa Rica every year, because
Oh, wow.
I know, I sort of cater towards women who are always pouring into everybody else but themselves, so they're left on the
Yeah,
back burner. And I
yeah.
love creating an experience where they can take naps when they want and get a
Mm,
massage and hang out at the pool, read a good book, like all of the things that they don't get to do, so that they
yes,
have quiet time, they have the mental clarity, and then they come back refreshed and rejuvenated so that they can be the best version of themselves. It's absolutely life-changing. But for
mm,
someone, like, to sell someone who thinks that that's, selfish, or oh, I could never spend the money on
yeah,
myself, I could never leave, my family. Well, let me tell you, when you leave your family for amount of time and dad has to do things that you would normally do, when you come back, all of a sudden you have a whole new level of appreciation from all of them, because they're like,
that's
he
right.
does not do it the right way or whatever, your
Yes,
way. um,
yes.
so I am a huge advocate. As scary as it is, the first time I went on a retreat myself, it seemed so like it was way outside my comfort zone. I felt all the feels, all the guilt, but there's something about even just taking that step that like starts this whole opening yourself up to
Mm,
different experiences, learning something new, realizing, oh my gosh, I probably do work too much if I can't even get
mm,
away for a little bit of
yeah,
time. So anyway, like,
mm,
to that point, yes, I'm a big advocate for retreats. They're life-changing and amazing, and
yes.
you should totally do that. But even just advocating for yourself, like, that's a big thing that, as a fertility practitioner, which a lot of people are like, I don't even know what that is or whatever. It's and in the vasectomy reversal world, there isn't really any others that are specifically specialized for that.
Mm,
But that's a big piece of what I want to do, is I want to equip you with a holistic big picture so that you can advocate, run these labs, or the lab said this and I want to try that,
yeah.
because there's so much of it that people miss. And if you go into a fertility clinic, they're going to, quote unquote, sell you on whatever methodologies that they have to sell. It's like you go to the
Yes.
shoe store, they're not going to sell you tennis balls, right? So
No, that's right.
so
That's
it
right.
is like so
Yeah.
important, I think, to have sort of that big picture and to listen to yourself, because I think a lot of Western medicine is like, well, I'm the doctor and I know best.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel like, well, you're the doctor, you know best. Like, I shouldn't be questioning what you're saying, but your gut's telling you something else. So I really, really love like just that emphasis on like advocating for yourself
Yeah.
and really following your gut, because I'm sure that there are times that you look in your sweet baby girl's face and you think, had I given up on you, what
Mm. Oh, yes.
And
Absolutely.
I find that a lot because the
Mm,
road to having, like in general, for most people,
yeah.
like if you're struggling with infertility, but particularly after a reversal and it takes time to heal and remove inflammation. I mean, if you think about it, you're taking essentially two pieces of hair and putting them back
Mm,
together again. Like that in of itself is crazy.
mm,
Conception, that whole process is like a crazy miracle. So it's like,
it is.
but when it doesn't happen as quickly as you want it to, or you experience loss, especially if it's repeatedly, naturally, we just want to say, like, oh, I'm done with this. Like, I just want to give up. It's too hard. It's too hard.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's right.
man, you look at that baby and you're like, I'm so glad. I'm so glad I didn't give up.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And you
Yeah.
listen to your gut, like,
Yes.
even if
Yeah.
you didn't agree or other people, all the naysayers. And I'm on this
Yeah.
quest now because like that's always the big thing. Like I had a baby at 40 and then now I'm pregnant at almost 45.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, well, everybody wants to tell me that fertility falls off the cliff at 35. And I'm here to tell you it doesn't. And
No,
the
that's
lady
right.
at my appointment today, she was like, wow, you're the youngest 44-year-old looking pregnant woman I've had. And I'm like, well, thank you. I think we just became best friends. But so I'm on the big mission.
I mean, age is a big thing for birth in Australia. You're told at, I think, over the age of 40, maybe even a bit earlier, that you need to deliver the baby at 39 weeks. So they won't let you go past that. Well, they try not to let you go past that. So again, even though, I was pregnant, we're having a good pregnancy, I was healthy, my history was good with my birth with Harrison and Elijah. The doctor said, "Oh, because of your age, you need to give birth at this time." So again, I just went into why mode, questioned why. My health is good. I come here every so often. My blood pressure's fine. You know, what are the risks? Tell me, what are the risks? And in the end, we got to a point where he said, well, we just need to give the hospital 2 weeks notice. And I went, is this administrative or is this about the risk to me and the baby? So I said, well, look, if I haven't had her by 41 weeks, like just put in a date with the hospital if that's what you need to do. And let's just see, we're due for weekly appointments at that point in time. And she was, oh, I think it was 40, well, it was 40 weeks plus 3 days or something. We were scheduled to go to the hospital for induction. And I was thinking, no, this is not happening. I don't want to be induced. And she came on her own the day before. So yeah, again, there's all these rules and I get, there are regulations for certain reasons, but again, I just, want women to be able to question and to then be able to make the decision themselves, not to be led without being informed. Yeah.
I love that. I personally decided because I struggled so much personally with breastfeeding with my three kids, even this last time when I thought I knew something, but a lot of my feelings, I felt very rushed. It was a very stressful process. And it was because of everyone around me, and I was listening to other people instead of just really getting quiet, getting educated, speaking up for myself. So I appreciate that you know, listen to your gut. There's a reason why that intuition is there for sure. But if you could talk to somebody who's currently struggling, either infertility, pregnancy loss, they're in the weight, which is a lot of my people. It's like they've had the reversal and there's some healing that needs to take place there, whatever. What advice or insights or even just words of encouragement would you share with them?
Yeah, this is a big one. And, you know, no one can see me, but I'm closing my eyes because I just feel into my heart with this. what I would say to them is to be kind to yourself. Yeah, just first and foremost, be kind to yourself. And yeah, time is a big one. I feel like we have this time pressure put on us, and then we set a time for ourselves as well. So, whilst being kind to yourself, let go of the time. Yeah, let go of the time. And a wise woman said to me, hold the vision. So just keep visualizing, you with your baby, every little detail, journal, write it down, or talk, make a voice memo, listen to yourself, every day talking about, what this looks like. And just, I think also we get really caught up in control and trying to make things happen. And for us, when it happened with Amelia, we went to a wedding and had a beautiful night out, stayed in a hotel, and it was all about love and passion and being on our own with no kids. They were being babysat. So when people actually say, oh, when you step away, or when you go on holiday and these things happen, or when you decide to just let go a bit, you hear the stories, oh, then they became pregnant. And well, that happened. That happened for us. We weren't timing. We weren't looking at when I was ovulating. We weren't doing this, that, and the other. Yes, all those things are important. But I think there comes a time when you just need to breathe and be kind to yourself and just tell yourself you're doing a bloody amazing job, and just keep holding that vision throughout everything that you're doing. Yeah, that would be my advice.
I love that so much. And I do kind of, I mean, I take my clients through that same thing about, just there's tons of advice on Facebook groups
Mm.
and whatever. They're like, should I go inverted? Should I use a cup? Should I do this? Should I do that? And I said, sis, like if that enhances your romantic connection with your spouse or whoever, okay. But if it makes it so stressful and awkward that it is
Mm.
not a fun experience, don't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my clients was like, it used to be before my husband had his vasectomy and then consequently the reversal, but he used to just look at me and I'd get pregnant. I'm like, then do that. Like, stop
Yeah.
getting wrapped around the axle because so much about stress in our bodies. Like our body is constantly trying to maintain equilibrium. So if it feels stress, and you may not even think that you're stressed, but if it feels like there's something there, you're not going to be fertile because it's not going to want to expend more
Mm.
energy on another life form if it's just trying to survive for itself. So while sometimes the advice of just, let go or take a vacation or a night out, while that's not always a helpful thing when you're in the wait and it feels excruciating because you want a baby yesterday, there's a
Mm.
lot of truth to it,
Mm.
like
Yeah,
there's a
exactly.
lot of truth.
Not actually just about, yeah, take the break or take the vacation. It's what that does to your system, to your mind and your body. Yeah.
Exactly. I love that. So even just like letting go of the control, because I have, several clients that it is a struggle. And it was I mean, it took us 2 years to get well, now she's 4, but it took us 2 years. And I thought I was doing all the things right. And in the interim, I really found my own health mentally, physically, spiritually, that I
Mm.
wouldn't trade any of that foundational work for anything now.
Yes.
So yes, I appreciate you just being so real and raw and sharing your story. And I'm curious, like if there's anybody who, and I'll make sure it's in the show notes, but if anybody wants to connect with you or learn more about what you're doing and helping women in your business, how do they find you?
Yeah, thank you. So, after my or during my leave, maternity leave with Amelia, again, listened to my intuition, and that wasn't to go back to the corporate world. I wanted to be more present with all three kids, and especially after going through everything that we went through, I didn't want to miss out, just on the day-to-day and the milestones. But at the same time, it's important for me to have my own identity, and, I'm driven and really motivated. And so I've gone back to my childhood dream, which was dressing up Barbies, but now I'm dressing up women. And so, yeah, I've become a personal stylist with an Australian brand called Intimo. And so I help women, I first of all fit them with their lingerie. So I specialize in bra fittings, which is super important because, again, as women, we don't spend time or money even on ourselves. And it's something that the majority of women wear every day, but it's usually ill-fitting and, uncomfortable for them. So I do lingerie and capsule wardrobes, which is really popular in Australia. It's all about helping women to dress easily and not have that added to their mental load of when you walk to your wardrobe and you think, what am I wearing today? I've got all these clothes, but I've got nothing to wear. So I help them with that, and, it brings me so much joy. And I help women from all walks of life, and fittings from, teenage girls who are just developing, to elderly women as well. So my Instagram for my styling business is at Styled by Danielle Barth. And just because one business is not enough, I've built an online business which is all about health and wellness and drinking the right water, which became really important for me. Trying to have Amelia, and we drink Kangen water in our home, but it's also an opportunity for women who want to be home with their children but want to earn an income and who want that identity. And so I'm part of a community of like-minded women who have been doing this business. The organisation's been around for 50 years that we've partnered with. So my Instagram is at I am Danielle Bartholomeusz, and it will be in the show notes, as Susan mentioned, because it is a long surname. But with that one, I really wanted my full name because this is the one where I feel like I've come into my own. And, I'm no longer an employee. So I really wanted to stand strong in what I'm doing here. And it was important to have my full name.
Man, I love that. And yes to water. I think it's something that we often just take for granted, but quality, especially when it comes to fertility, it's like such a powerful, if you think that like 87% of your neurological functions require water, and the majority of people are severely dehydrated.
Yes.
Not to mention it's a big problem for sperm health that most of my clientele are very concerned about. It's like, well, that's always my first question. How much water are you drinking? How much sleep are you getting? So it's super important to have quality so that you're actually getting, hydration at the cellular level. So I love to hear what you're doing, and appreciate you so very much for taking the time and sharing your precious story. And a few years ago, I always say this, but a few years ago, I went through this, who am I and what do I want to aspire to be? And I wanted to be the kid lady, which is kind of like a cat lady, but with kids. I just wanted to love on all the kids. So in a non-creeper way, I'm sending all of your little babies lots of hugs and kisses. And I'm so thankful for you and sharing your story.
Thank you so much.
To stay connected.
Yes, please do. Yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me on Conceiving After Vasectomy Reversal. I hope you're feeling encouraged and more hopeful on your journey to growing your family. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little extra support. I absolutely love reading your reviews. They mean the world to me. Like, seriously, words of affirmation are my love language. So let's stay connected. Find me on Instagram at Conceiving After VR, and join our Conceiving After Vasectomy Reversal Facebook community for even more support and encouragement. I believe that God placed the desire for a child on your heart for a reason, and I'm grateful to walk alongside you in this season, to encourage you, and to help you find joy in the journey, trusting that His plan is greater than we could ever imagine.
Thanks for listening.